she can make an entrance. Okay,
Yeah.
let's give her that credit, people. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Terrific film.
Thank you so much.
I think they seem to have kind of liked it.
Woo! Just a bit.
I know, and we've got a full house for you, so that's always a plus.
I know.
I hope you will take this as a compliment. I think we turned away about 60 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah, no. There was,
Oh my gosh.
How many of you were here for more than 2 hours waiting?
No way! Oh my god, that's crazy! Thank you!
Isn't it nice to have a cult?
Yeah, we were deep.
Well, what I'm going to do is she and I will converse for a few minutes, so you guys go do whatever you're going to do. I'll just talk a little bit, and then we're going to open it up to you folks, because I'm sure you've got questions. And I would like to ask one thing, which is like kind of keep the questions centered towards the film itself. That would be, I think, better for all of us. I'm going to start out, though, by pointing out you got an Academy Award nomination when you were, what, 13? Wow. And that was for a Coen Brothers film. Now, I have got to ask what it was like working with them.
You know, for the longest time after I made that movie, more people would come up to me and say, you have no idea what you just went through. That is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And as a 13, 14-year-old, I was like, great, sweet. They were brothers, and they laughed a lot and played with sticks and picked up from the ground. But I now realize way more than I did then what a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity working with the brothers was. I mean, I would do absolutely anything to work with them again. They were so incredible. I think the one thing I was most sort of impressed with was how, I mean, I love my brother to death, but I could never make a movie with them. How they like collaborated, and they would finish each other's sentences, and if one was in the slightest bit sort of unsure about something, the other was right there to give them the reassurance. So they were just, I mean, they're the definition of a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's over the years, it's become one of those names. The Coen Brothers
Sure.
is a singular to most people, and it's become one of those names where you see so many people whose careers really take off from there. You certainly seem to be in that pile.
Thank you.
You had been acting for quite a while prior to that.
Well, that was my first feature film.
Right.
I had done student thesis graduate films, I had done commercials, some guest starring roles on sitcoms, but that was about it up until that point. I started studying acting at 8 years old, and my mom's whole thing was, when I went to her, I think it was real, I was like, I want to be in commercials. That's kind of how it started. And she was like, okay, well, this is obviously a lot more of a commitment than you're used to, because I would decide I wanted to play tennis one day and then horseback ride the next, and there was obviously no connection between anything. So this was like, if you want to do this, study for 1 year, take acting classes for a full year, we'll look into it further. So 1 year, 8-year-old me to 9-year-old me stayed with it, and I fell in love with it. And after that, I signed with an agency, and I did all of those small projects until the Coen Brothers decided to give me a shot.
Yeah, and the shot seemed to pay off, I
Yeah.
think. Then, you know, the other one that I think most people know you for at this point is Pitch Perfect 2.
Sure.
Which, go ahead. Which certainly revealed a different side of you.
Sure, yes.
Of the singing part.
I thought you were talking about the awkwardness.
Well, that
That
too.
too.
Well, the awkwardness we certainly saw in this character. In terms of this film, you're working with a woman director, and you're dealing with a coming-of-age story of a young girl. Most coming-of-age stories of young girls are usually directed by men. It's only been in the last few years with movies like 17 or Diary of a Teenage Girl, or this one where actually women are starting to talk about their own experiences. To what degree did you find yourself in this film? What experiences, and did the director help you to get to those, to present them?
Absolutely. From the very beginning of this, from the audition process, Kelly, Freeman Craig, and myself had, I mean, super lengthy just conversations about life and about our personal experiences, and she actually did something incredibly amazing. She spent hours and hours and hours interviewing teens and high school and college students on themselves and their lives, and what, you know, where they come from and what their family dynamic is, and how it, you know, what their experience of growing up and being a teenager is. And within her research, she was able to put together this story that somehow captures every single moment that somebody has either gone through, every single one of them, or one of them at one point in their life. And there was so much in this movie that I felt I could identify with. And I think in some ways, I was homeschooled up until 6th grade, and I was then homeschooled, and so I technically didn't have that traditional high school experience. But I feel like I kind of had it a little bit later than everybody else. And so being able to make this movie, I really felt like it allowed me to actually be a teenager and let out every emotion I really have ever had. You know, I always say to my mom in certain situations, I'm like, man, can you imagine if I freaked out right now? And I actually got to do that in this movie. I got to freak out a lot, which was very, very liberating, I will say.
Did your mother have any problems with this film?
No, I don't think so. Mom had any problems? No, she didn't. She liked it, I think.
One of the things that I think is very acute in this film and very universal is the sense of being alone in a crowd, the sense of being the outsider or feeling that, which I think most people feel. Coming from a homeschool background, is that something that you felt once you got towards a, let's say, high school experience or towards a group experience?
Yes, there was a sense of alienation that I experienced being homeschooled, but at the same time, I have a great social life. I am surrounded by intelligent, hardworking people constantly. I have an older brother who I watched go through high school, and luckily could kind of tag along with him whenever I could. But yeah, I have all my friends that I grew up with and friends I've met in the last couple of years that are my same age, and we kind of, I live vicariously through them, and if not, I feel like in some ways I've made up for what I feel like I missed out on in high school, I guess you could say.
Well, I think in truth, that's kind of a common thing for most people, which is sooner or later we compensate for the things that we didn't have.
Right.
I want to open it up to the crowd because I think you guys probably have a lot of questions and we're not here all night. So, who has the courage to, that took it. You go.
What was it like working with Jeff Bridges?
The dude, my God. One of the best things about making this movie was wearing a Big Lebowski sweatshirt. So glad they went with that for the poster. That was, again, a once in a lifetime opportunity and experience. He is just, I've learned that there are some people that you can be a fan of, and sometimes meeting them isn't always the best thing because they're not necessarily who you think you're a fan of. And that is one person, one of many, fortunately, that I've met, but one person that is everything you want him to be and more. He is just, the absolute best human being I think I've ever met.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by him, and when you look at the young Jeff Bridges, the middle-aged Jeff Bridges, the older Jeff Bridges, they seem like three wholly separate people, all connected by the same soul.
Right.
Which is wonderful. I think Lebowski is also, you have to love that movie. Okay, right here.
Hi.
Hey.
What's something that draws you in to do a new project, and what are you hoping people take away from this movie?
Well, I think it's a combination of a lot of things when it comes to picking a new, picking a new project. With this, the story itself obviously was of interest to me. It felt like I could express so much of what I've gone through that I don't feel in any other movie or any other role or any other sort of form of self-expression I've been able to do. So that was something I was looking forward to with this, working with Kelly Freeman, working with the legendary Jim Brooks, and this cast that was around me in this movie was amazing. I think in terms of what I want people to take away from this movie, I feel very connected to John Hughes films and The Breakfast Club, 16 Say Anything, even 16 Candles, and I really, even though they're called timeless for a reason, we could call them our own, I don't really know that our generation has that film that they get to call their own, and there was something in this, and I hope that, what I'm getting at is I feel like people can watch this movie and feel like they're not alone, and they can feel like they see themselves in this movie, or they can find something within somebody in the movie or in the storyline that they identify with, and know that it's okay not to have the answer to every question, and life is freaking messy, and we're all in it together.
It's great. Okay, all the way in the back there with you, yes.
Yes,
Hi.
sir.
Oh my God.
Yes. Yay, yay.
There were a lot of Asians in the crew and in the cast, and that was really cool. But my question is, there are also a lot
There were
of
a lot of what? Sorry, I missed
like
it.
Asian cast and crew.
Oh,
So that was
word.
really cool.
Okay, great.
There were a lot of crime scenes in the film, and all of them were really unbelievable.
Oh, she's great. She's saying unbelievable.
How did you
close.
get to the mental state each time with so many people around you, and what did you think about? Yes, that's it. Thank you.
I like you. Well, wow, I mean, I guess in terms of what I thought about, there's a lot that went through my mind. I think that more so than ever on this film, I really learned how to take every single thing around me, whether it was the amount of people that were watching me or just staring at me for no reason. They didn't really even know what they were looking at. They just had nothing else to look at. Or the freezing cold weather and I was out there wearing nothing. I mean, I was not prepared for the weather in Vancouver in this movie. Or if it was just anything building up in my own personal life or in the movie's sake. I mean, luckily we shot this movie as close to chronological order as we could get. So a lot of what I was able to emote about was what I'd experienced as this character thus that far. And I think one thing that to this day, I think in my personal life, but as an actor, music is such a huge part of my process and my preparation. And I feel I have a playlist for almost every movie that I do. And there are some songs that I can't listen to now because they mark those moments in that film. So that would probably be, drawing from personal experience and listening to some music.
Yeah, great. All right, all the way in the center, the young woman.
Hi.
Hey.
Okay, so I love the movie, and my two roommates right here are film majors, but I know this is a little off topic, but I just wanted to ask how you transferred from like the film industry to the music industry because your music is amazing.
Thank you so much. Well, I actually got into music around the same time I started acting. I would record covers in the studio just so that I could get a feel of what it was like being in a recording studio. I knew it was something I always wanted to explore, but it became more of a side project once the movies kind of became more of a full-time thing, took up all my time. And in that time I was writing with friends and family who were music producers and writers, and again, kind of keeping it alive as much as I could. And it really became a matter of timing and how am I gonna do this in a way that makes sense. So it's not, me being like, oh, I'm making a movie and here's a song that I did. But that it would make sense and that it would mean something and that people would take me seriously. And so I kind of always hoped that it would happen through a movie. And then this little thing called Pitch Perfect 2 came along. And that was really what gave me the perfect sort of opportunity to show people that that was something I loved and something I wanted to do. And then before that movie came out, I was signed by Republic Records, and within 6 months I had a single out.
Okay, right here is Chuck. Yes, you.
Yes, that guy, you guy. All right.
Hello. Is
Hey.
there a part of this film that just resonates with you so strongly right now in your life? And when you were filming it, what part of your life did you use to portray that and personify that moment in the film? Thank you very much, Steve Stern.
Wow, over and out, just fine. Wow. What moment in the film resonates with me most today? That's what you're asking.
That is correct.
Oh my God. Definitely not the sending of text messages. I'm gonna be 20 soon, and I still feel like I've got a lot to figure out. And I still feel like I have moments where I think I've got it all figured out, and I really don't. And I think realizing that I don't is not necessarily easy, but it's more important than acting like you've got it all together, because that can get you into a lot of trouble. I've learned that the hard way. So I think in sort of relating to the universal theme of the movie, just trying to find my place and trying to figure out life itself and figure out who I am and what I want to do and where I want to be and how I want to spend my time. I think just trying to figure life out. I'm just trying to figure it out, you know, man?
Right here. Yes.
So when you're cast as a character in a film, what do you do to sort of research the character so that you can fully understand it before you try to become it? So the space between that and film.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite parts about making movies is the preparation and doing every bit of research you could possibly do so that the minute you get on set, you just have to forget everything and just live. I worked with Larry Moss on this project. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he's basically like the god of acting and coaching. He's like so much more than just an acting coach. He's like a life coach. And I remember distinctly, I was like 15 or 16 years old, and I wanted to go buy his book, and I read like the synopsis and I didn't understand a word, so I was like, well, this is not going to help me in any way, right? So I then went online and I was like, how can I take a class from this guy? And I saw that he was in New York and there was like a 2-year waiting list to get into this master class of his. And 2 years later, I got a call from Jim Brooks asking me if it would be okay with me if I coached Larry Moss for this project. And I mean, as if anybody would say no, I was beside myself. And I went and I worked with this man, and within 20 minutes, I have never had such an experience before where within 20 minutes, this guy made me laugh hysterically to the point where it hurt. I was crying, I was confused, I was unhappy, I was excited. It was so weird and amazing, and one thing he taught me was do everything you could possibly do research-wise, know everything you can know about everything there is to know about this movie, about the other characters, about yourself, about what it's like to have to take the bus to school or show up in your mom's not-so-cool car and that kind of every single little detail. And then when you're there, forget everything. And I really felt like I was just being that teenager that I am and in some ways never got to be. So that's kind of what I did in this movie. I just kind of lived.
That's, thank you, because that's pretty much what we tell our students, which is do the research and then put it away. So thank you.
Of course.
A good object lesson. All the way in the back there. No, you with your hand, right there, yes, you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hey, girl.
Hey!
One, you as far as fuck. Don't say it.
Wait, what?
Good.
Wait, what?
You're fire. Like you pop.
Oh my God, thank you! I'm missing all the compliments. Damn, thank you.
I was excited. Like, I was like, where's she? I gotta let her know she popping.
Thank you.
And then, you was her. Like, when you was in her position, what would you do if your best friend was dating your brother? Because I got 18 brothers and sisters. And when my friends date one of those, I'm gonna be mad.
Sorry?
18.
You got 8.
Yeah, my dad's a hoe, bro. You know?
I understand. Okay. I feel like our answers might be a lot different. Yeah, it's funny. It's never happened. But in some ways, I feel like one of my best friends started dating my brother. Like, that's cool because I like her, right? Like, we all gotta like her, you know what I mean? Because if we don't, then yeah. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, you know what? Like, he's my brother. Okay, don't cross the line, and you're my best friend. So like, back off, brother, kind of thing. It's a conflicting thing. She handled it probably close to how I would have, I think. I don't really know. What would you do? I'm curious. 18.
Oh, okay.
Stand back up.
Like, obviously, okay. Well, it depends who they date. Because they date my sister I live with, I wouldn't be as mad because she's okay. It's okay. I don't know. But I have a friend that you don't want to get down.
There's 18 of them, keep going.
Yeah, which best friend? My best friend's right here. If somebody was dating her, I'd be happy.
Oh, word. Okay, that's sweet.
She also loves me. She's not going to say it. I say it.
Hey, you're funny.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, next strange question.
I like that. I didn't think it was that strange.
Oh, it's fun strange.
I'm strange.
Oh, fun strange.
Of all the roles you've played, which one have you related to the most?
Wow. I will tell you that I've never played a role that I haven't identified with a crazy amount. Otherwise, I don't know how I would have ever played them. But I think In terms of relating on the most personal level, probably Nadine. Only because it is real life, it's a contemporary piece, and it covers absolutely everything we go through as teenagers, I feel, or personally that I've gone through, whether it's, you know, the moment of like, again, how you're pulling up to school, what you're wearing. And I guess in our world, you know, it doesn't matter sort of who we are, what we do. There's always gonna be that one person, whether it's on a comment, on an Instagram photo, or over Twitter, or whatever, there's gonna be that somebody that's gonna have something to say. And I think that this movie also deals with that perfectly, the whole social media aspect, where it's not the center of the film, but it's integrated into it in a real life way with how it really kind of affects us. So I would say that this probably is, on the most personal level, the one I can relate to the most.
Thank you, you're awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, one last question all the way back there.
Hey,
My question is,
that was a little weird, sorry.
improvised, and also how was it working with Woody Harrelson?
It was amazing. So a lot of the scenes with Woody, we were able to go off book and just riff and have fun. And one thing with him and I, we developed a banter of our own, personally, us two. That was so much fun that to the point where Kelly would let the cameras roll for, I mean, I think like, I want to say like 7 minutes was the record where Woody and I were just like talking over the desk, and he had food and chips and like was giving me like one bean at a time. It was just weird. It was like stuff like that. It was going off, and she was just laughing out in the, you know, video village, and we were like, all right, might as well just keep going. She's not calling cut, so what's the next thing we can come up with? And sometimes it would be amazing, and I would say stuff that I was like, damn girl, okay, you're good. It was like, yeah, I have no idea where this is going. I'm gonna try and bring this home, and it's just not connecting. But a lot of the scenes we had the freedom given to us by our director to improvise and to I was gonna say really change anything, but there was the script was so flawlessly written that there was nothing that needed to be changed. But she allowed us the freedom that if anything felt unrealistic in any way in terms of the language, she said, you do what you do, or you say what you would normally say. So there were a couple moments here and there, but again, most of it actually was pretty true to the script because it was so well written and nothing needed to be changed. But moments is really kind of what she let us riff on.
Okay, as much as